Hey guys, I'm Phylum, welcome to the show. Today I'm going to be doing an analysis of a game from the Quake World Championship 2017. If you don't recognize the guys on the screen, this is Rapha and Cooller playing their Group A match on Blood Covenant. I'm going to be going through talking about what these guys do. Rapha spends a lot of this game kind of on the back foot. Cooller very interestingly picks Sorlag here and uses it to great effect. Rapha is playing lighter champions, he picks Nyx, Slash, and Ranger. Cooller has the Sorlag, he also picks Nyx and Ranger because Nyx is just too good right now. Nyx is a must pick in Duel. And yeah, we're going to see how these guys go. I think this brings us, right into the action. So, off the bat, we just get a nice, simple, straightforward split of the items. Rapha doesn't have the railgun. We're on Rapha's point of view. So not having that railgun is a real consideration. He doesn't want to open himself up too much. And yeah, you can see him just hanging around this mega health side of the map, trying to feel out where Cooller is. Cooller actually sneaks his way around. Rapha has a good idea of where he's going to come from. I like how long Cooller waits here. He doesn't just come to that teleporter at the obvious time. He waits around until Rapha doesn't expect it, and you can see how powerful that railgun would be if it connects. Unfortunately, he just whiffs it or something, but Rapha gets himself a rail, so now we're in a nice and even situation. Cooller is looking to stop Rapha from coming into the mega. Because Cooller's there in that really great spot, Rapha just says, cool, he's going to come and take the red armor, and they split off these items. And this is a really, really common thing to see in Quake Champions, especially at the start of rounds. These items are going to stay nice and synced up, and if one player can start to separate them a bit, maybe they're going to get an advantage. Now, this is a really good position for Rapha right now. Sorlag, because Sorlag's just taken the mega, and Sorlag can stack up on armors so much. Even though Rapha just got the red, he has less armor than a fully armor-stacked Sorlag. So Rapha comes to this spot, and we're going to see this spot a lot. From here, Rapha, if the situation goes badly, it's so easy for him, he can just drop down just next to these egg timers. In this situation, he doesn't have to drop though. He does alright, he kind of double backs in and gets a bit aggressive, forcing Cooller off the map. In this situation, they have basically even stacks for all intents and purposes. Whoever gets the first damage in the fight is going to be better off. Now right now, Rapha has a pretty good idea of the split between the mega and the red armor, and he knows he can get really, really quickly from the mega down here, and he's going to take a shot with the railgun here. The stream, just as a quick note there, I did play. The stream does stutter occasionally, so apologies for that. But yeah, Rapha would love to hit a railgun right now. And wait, he might actually hit one. Hold on, let me just... I distracted myself there. So from this mega, he's going to come down. And then the stream freezes. Okay, so he does hit a railgun there. He eats a railgun in return, so all in all, Sorlag gets away a lot stronger from that. And I think he hits the shot before the red armor's picked up, crucially. So Sorlag still gets the benefit of all that armor and can just pick up HP bubbles. Right here, Rapha, when he's in this position here, because Cooller with this advantage is going to try and push for a frag. From right here, Rapha's kind of trapped in a corner, right? There's nowhere easy for him to go, so when Cooller comes through, he has two options. He can either try and fight to the death, he can try and back out of the door and eat a bunch of LG, or he can drop down. Especially walking into that asset, he's just going to try and drop down and use his speed to get away, but Cooller knows and tries to chase. Rapha goes for a sneaky double back, it doesn't get him anywhere, and Cooller gets a really, really clean and convincing first frag. So now that Cooller has the frag on Rapha, he's going to be staying in these top positions on the map, he's going to be looking for Rapha to come for the railgun. And this is actually really sneaky. Cooller kind of subverting what you might expect and just trying to catch Rapha in the middle of the map here in between items. The red armor is up on its point. Oh no, it's just been collected. That was a bit weird. I don't know what happened to the timer there. But Cooller, now he knows it's time for mega. And he catches Rapha getting into position for it, so that's great. Both players kind of catch each other out. No one has a clear advantage there. But Rapha ends up in the stronger position to lock down this mega and pick it up. Cooller's doing a fancy dance around the pillars to try and hit a shot, and I'm not really sure about this moment from Rapha. I think this is actually a mistake. What I think he was trying to achieve here was to throw Cooller off, right? A really classic move for exiting the mega cleanly is to throw the dire orb off, and we're going to see Rapha do this again lately, right? You use the dire orb as kind of a bait. You throw it off, your opponent gets distracted, and then you leave. What I guess Rapha was trying to catch Cooller off guard, but he just kind of walks into a rocket in this encounter, and I don't know, in this situation it actually works out for him, oddly enough, but so yeah, right now, okay, Rapha does have a fairly notable advantage actually, but one rocket would really close that fast, and interestingly here, like, Rapha takes no damage from this shot, right? Like, Cooler's here, he's firing it right here, Rapha's there, and it just manages to not deal any damage. So I think Rapha gets a little bit fortunate. If he'd have taken a decent rocket there, their stacks would be a lot closer, but Rapha comes out from that with an advantage. And yeah, so right now he just wants to try and chase Cooller down. Cooller comes to a pretty predictable spot where there aren't a lot of exits. If Cooller can survive until this Mega comes up, he'd be happy. But no, he's ultimately going to move away from the Mega. He's going to let the Mega go to Rapha. Solag probably has the ability to survive on there, and like you can see how quickly Solag can stack back up, you know, just on HP bubbles, just on those small armors. Rapha does a good job of hitting that rail, almost threads the needle there, but ultimately, yeah, Solag just moving around, using these HP bubbles to keep a decent stack. Cooller now in this spot where he can drop away if things start to go bad, but also take a sneaky peek rail onto that red, and that time Cooller hits it. So red's going to be picked up. There's a whole load of time for Rapha to get into the Mega. Lovely little shot from Cooller. He sees Rapha's up there, and he knows with that shot there's a decent stack difference. Now, this is a really good advantage of just using Solag's tankiness here, right? So he knows Rapha's eaten this rail. Cooller can afford to take a rocket if it means he's going to get the frag, just because of how different these guys' stacks are. And with Rapha moving up this narrow walkway here, he knows that he's going to hit a bunch of that LG. Like, if Rapha wants to go for Mega, he's going to take a lot of damage. If Rapha wants to drop away, then Cooller can just start to move himself over towards the Mega. Rapha chooses to move towards the Mega, and he is so weak from this. Cooller now down below that railable threshold as well. It's just going to come down to who can hit their shot. And there, Rapha uses the Dire Orb again as a bait to actually delay Cooller long enough to pick up the Mega. So from that situation, no one dies somehow. Cooler's nice and weak though, and Rapha is going to chase him down. Now here's a really interesting fight. Cooler's on 28 HP, somehow he doesn't die here. And, I mean, Cooler's going up the bounce pad, right? So, let's take a look at that, right? So Cooller is so weak here, right? Down to 18 HP, and once he drops down, Rapha should have no problem cleaning up the frag. So what does Cooller do? He dances around. Look at how Cooller kind of moves forwards and backwards, and ultimately more or less stays in this place. That rocket Rapha just fired, you could see going over Cooler's head down here, it went somewhere back to one of the doorways, because Rapha's expecting Cooller to try and leave the room, but Cooller doesn't. Cooller does the least expected thing possible. Cooller knows he can't leave the room without dying, basically, because Rapha's going to spam him out. And because, you know, Solag's so big, Solag's so slow, so up the bounce pad, and he gets 50 damage off onto Rapha as he goes. That's more, and the acid spit, sorry, so, like, that was a decent chance at a frag, potentially, if 2 more of those acid spitballs hit, and Rapha's nice and weak off of the spawn, so Cooler's going to have some space to run around and collect some guns. This isn't a move I would advise anyone to try in Quake Champions, you know, don't go for the damage and die. That can be a thing in other Quakes, but especially in Quake Champions, it's wrong like 99% of the time. But when you're Cooller, you get to make that decision. So Rapha gets himself stacked back up, he gets himself a railgun again. Cooler's trying to be nice and aggressive. Rapha rather. Sorry, Cooller stacks himself up, he gets the guns. Rapha's trying to be nice and aggressive. And ultimately, yeah, he gets the damage down onto Cooller to win himself the red armor nice and cleanly. Cooller doesn't want to risk taking a railgun here, because it would just put him at such a huge disadvantage. Cooller wants to ultimately hold on to his Ghost Walk, and I'm going to try and stop saying ultimately, because I've said it a few times now. So yeah, with Mega coming up, Rapha misses a rocket jump rather, and that's actually going to be really important. So if we have a look here, right? Cooller hits a rail, and Rapha tries to rocket jump across, and he fails. From this position, 5 seconds until Mega, Rapha probably doesn't need this small armor. He probably goes straight for the Mega here. But because he fails, he comes up, he goes, okay, he can take the small armor, but in this time, Cooler's gotten to this really good position through this doorway. If Rapha wants to come through this arch now, he's going to take a lot of damage from the lightning gun. This wouldn't have happened if he'd have made his rocket jump the first time. He could have poked his head through, you know, maybe still backed away, but maybe had a decent chance to get on this Mega. And so Rapha's forced away. And he doesn't hit any shots. Literally the worst thing that could have happened there. He gets the small armor, and there's so much time before the red that he doesn't have the confidence to just go over there. He's actually just going to come and chill out on this side of the map, pick up the small armor as it comes. He knows that the red armor's only coming up now. You know, Rapha has the time on this, and he's pretty sure that Cooler's going to take it. Interestingly, if you notice, Cooller hasn't taken it yet. Cooller takes it then. So Cooler's just offset that item by like 10 seconds, right? And this is a classic Cooller move. Cooller loves to play with the timing of the items a lot. Rapha thinks he knows when the red armor is, so Cooller can now set up a trap. He can like take a bit of a passive position. Rapha might come in for the red armor, thinking it's at a certain time, thinking he can pick it up in the fight and then win the fight. But Cooller knows. Cooller knows exactly when this is. I don't think it comes into play here, but we'll have to see. So Mega's next. Rapha looking for Cooller to cross the map. Cooler's crossed the bottom of the map here. So Rapha's in a good spot where he can do damage to Cooller as he goes for Mega. And Rapha's actually going to push in towards the item and get the damage off the bounce pad. This is big. This is a lot of damage, but Cooller hits a rocket in return. That's a pretty big time to make a stand for Rapha, honestly, given that the round's about to end, right? And we're about to go into this overtime. Okay, so Rapha makes a play over to the red armor, and you can see, like, he considers teleporting over, but he realizes something's up. He realizes that it should be up, and it isn't. And so he knows Cooler's up to something. So he just decides to back away, right? He doesn't want anything to do with Cooler's mind game traps. And he's just going to take this small armor again. So we're in pretty even territory again with these stacks. Cooller ghost walking away. This is a good time for Rapha right now, right? Even though he's quite weak, he knows he's just forced Cooler's ghost walk out. He can pick up, 4 health bubbles pretty easily. But he's actually interesting positions. He's just trying to stay on the side of the map where the item isn't. And Cooller just reading this out really well in these odd positions as well. Cooller is hunting for the frag right now, and there finally he hits the railgun and gets it. So that's round 1. A bit of an overtime, a bit of excitement there. Interesting decisions from both players. Cooller ultimately feeling like he's in the driving seat for the majority of that game, He just hit more shots at the end of the day. If Rapha had hit a few more of his rails he was looking for, I think it could have been a much stronger round for Rapha. So, dreadful start there for Rapha. He almost walks into the acid as well, which would have been hilarious. But, yeah, he's forced to ghost walk right off the bat. Cooller is loving life right now. He has such a huge advantage as Soul Lag, and that moment right there from Rapha, that stops Cooller just pushing and getting this frag, right? Like, how does Rapha know? It's such a perfect rocket. It's so good from Rapha. It's such a, just, like I said, a perfect read of the situation. Look at how Rapha moves around the middle of the map too, the way he uses these pillars for cover while he's peeking these shots. And he actually comes back around a little bit aggressively even, looking for the damage and looking for the red armor. He picks up the nail gun, right? Because in this situation, if Cooller wants to push up the stairs, Rapha now has the gun to answer that. But ultimately, they decide to split off the items, a nice standard start. But again, you can see Cooller delaying this Mega, right? So now Cooller has a big advantage and the knowledge of the map, right? Rapha waits in this spot again. This is the second time we've seen him here, but this time it pays off hugely. And now with this damage down, he's going to ghost walk aggressively to try and clean up this frag. Cooller coming down to the pillars, right? And the pillars are a great spot to kind of be a bit tricky, to throw your opponent off if they're chasing you, and to potentially hit a lot of damage out if you have superior fighting skills, which in this situation I think Cooller does, right? I think these Europeans aiming and just their combat is really setting them apart from the North Americans in a lot of their matchups. Oh. Cool, so again, Cooler's delays don't amount to anything, but the idea is still good. Rapha, from that little catch, seizing very, very strong control of the map. So in that situation, Cooller gets a hell of a lot more damage off, just in those rockets, but Rapha only needed to hit 1 rail to have a good situation there. And now Rapha has a bunch of time to get from this red over to look for damage on the Mega. He's checking his angles first to make sure Cooller isn't trying to stop him moving across the map. But now he's just going to push in, and Cooler's very, very smart to not be here. Cooller doesn't want to tangle with Rapha while Rapha's seizing control of the map. Cooller can just stack up in his own way. There are still small armors he can get to make himself stronger. Rapha's very careful there to not make a sound cue. If you step in that puddle, your opponent's going to know exactly where you are, and Rapha's actually getting crafty here. He's looking to catch Cooller in between these items. At this point, picking up more stack isn't going to benefit Rapha. A frag is what he needs. And he misses both his railguns there. So right now, Rapha, Rapha was giving control of the map away to Cooller anyway, just because the saw lag can stack up so much on small armors. So Rapha decides to get really tricky and try and make sure he maintains an advantage. In this situation, it just does not work at all. But he's still able to get the Mega. Cooller comes and looks for the shot and doesn't hit them, and on top of that, actually moves really predictably onto the small armor, letting Rapha pick up a couple of rockets. The interesting thing about this too for Cooller, well, that is just great play from Rapha, just really solid aiming, shutting down what Cooller wanted to do there. Really ballsy of Cooller too to think that he can just push through. So like, I think what Cooller hoped would happen there is that he could just spend his stack basically and then clean up the other armors. And he didn't expect Rapha to push through like this at all. Yeah, it's just a really great read from Rapha of where Cooller wanted to go. Just catching him in the worst spot coming out of that teleporter. Like, absolutely nowhere Cooller can go. The momentum you have coming out of a teleporter, making him such an easy target for that lightning gun. Now Rapha needs to be fast if he wants to get the Mega. And we're going to see him taking his time actually getting over here. But he knows his opponent's now playing a light character as well, and that the stacks are going to be quite even. So right now, Rapha doesn't actually care about the Mega. He's done the damage. All he needs is a little bit more, and he's nullified that pickup. And he doesn't quite get that actually. So Cooller gets away with a little bit of the Mega, but that's going to tick down in no time at all. I like this position from Cooller here, right? This is an amazing spot to wait. You get all kinds of information. This is Cooller, a few times in this match actually, Cooller makes really great use of sound cues. Lots of people here, you know, they'd be spamming, they'd be making some noise, they'd be looking for their opponent to come from the way Rapha is. Cooller just waits, and he waits for the perfect time to hear that sound, and you can see he was ready for this situation. He catches Rapha with the LG and forces out the Ghost Walk, and wins the red armor. So that works out really, really well for Cooller, and Rapha misses his shot, and Cooller hits his shot. Like, that cannot go any better. Cooller should win Mega here, but instead he's looking for the frag. And picking up frags in that connector right there is something I know Cooller for in Quake Live. Like, you see him do it in quite a lot of games. Players come down to that connector near the lightning gun, they're like, oh shit, what the hell was Cooller doing there? He does exactly the same thing here. You know, he knows Rapha. I've seen him get that exact frag on Rapha in Quake Live. Cooller should be pretty happy getting over to this red armor, I think. I mean, he's just tied the game up, so there's no real rush to get control. And that is such a sneaky shot to hit, so hard to return. Rapha with only the nail gun. You know, it's hard for Cooller to push in. Like, Cooller doesn't really want to move forwards into Rapha there, so he just takes the rails. Rapha's in this position again where Cooller knows that he's probably going to catch him out with a shot if he comes through at the right time. And Cooller spamming out there to discourage Rapha. Rapha actually decides to push through this doorway anyway. This is an interesting move from Rapha, and this is where Slash's movement can be so strong. Because even though Cooler's spamming this out, Rapha's actually able to just kind of move through. This is a ballsy move from Rapha, right? But if you think about the stacks, this is probably the closest they're going to be for a while. If Rapha gives this away to Cooller, then Cooler's going to be firmly in control. And he actually is able to force the Ghost Walk out. I think this is kind of what he hoped to achieve here. And right now, Rapha's about to control every item on the map. So from a situation where they were more or less even with Cooller about to seize control, Rapha's just flipped this around and picked up everything. Stack-wise, they're about the same now, but Rapha, you know, has kind of held this in place and put himself more or less in the driving seat. With 10 seconds to go, we're unlikely to see a frag, but it's not going to matter anyway. Now we're in a situation where any frag is going to win the game. So Cooler's just setting up a trap here. He would love Rapha to run by in a predictable spot, and he looks for the flick rail. And this is a thing about these really strong players, right? Cooller looks for the shot, he doesn't hit it, so he leaves. He doesn't get greedy, he doesn't try and take too many shots, but he comes back to this position to hear where Rapha's going to go afterwards on the exit. And when Rapha starts moving towards the doorway, right? Because when you're in a doorway, you don't have very much room to dodge. You know, that's when Cooller sticks his head out and looks for the shot. At the worst possible time for Rapha. So Cooller knows where Rapha wants to come from here. Again, coming to this spot, shutting out this archway. We see Cooller come here quite a few times in this game. And Rapha looking for the pressure, again, using this speed to really get in Cooler's face. Cooller grabs the Mega and just ghost walks out. You know, he doesn't want to lose the Mega he's just picked up. And now Cooler's in a good spot to pick up the red, potentially. He actually doesn't want to go for it though. He's looking to catch Rapha out, and again, just like the last round, where Cooller might be looking for these items, he instead comes and hunts for the frag. Cooller decides to use the Ghost Walk there because it's a bit dicey, but he gets the chase down on Rapha and picks the frag up on the bounce pad. Mostly that comes from catching Rapha through the teleporter, right? Where was that? Was that after this? Wow. Yeah, just here. That was all it took, right? That one rocket in the teleporter. Cooller on the Ghost Walk just decides this is the best opportunity he's going to get and chases Rapha. Coming out of that Ghost Walk with the 100 damage rocket, Rapha doesn't quite time his shot correctly, so Cooller takes nothing. And that's all it needs for Cooller to swing the balance in his favor and chase down that frag. Okay, so the round starts and we get a fantastic view over Cooller's shoulder. I hate that we missed the first like 5 or 10 seconds of every single round, but this is the world in 2017. So these players have a bit of a standoff at the railgun. They both try and bait each other out. Ultimately, Rapha's the careless one, which isn't something you get to say about Rapha very often. I actually thought Rapha ghost walked there the first time I watched this, but he actually just ducks back around the pillar, and Cooller kind of unexpectedly demolishes him with LG. Like, if you're Rapha in that situation, you don't expect to die there. Rapha was hoping he was just going to hit really good rockets, because there's nowhere for Cooller to move there, right? Like, the rockets should, in theory, have the advantage, but in this case, Cooller just makes it work, because he's Cooller. And, like, Rapha rushing over to the bridge, again, hoping to catch Cooller, like, at this red armor or over the railgun. So yeah, this has gone just about as badly as it could for Rapha. He does well to still grab the Mega Health and use his ability to get away cleanly. That's a really important read, just like knowing when the Mega would be up and how he could use his ability to get out without dying. But yeah, it was still just a matter of time until that death came. So Cooller's in full control and he's Solag. This is a nightmare. This is just absolutely what you don't want to play against, right? Once Solag has control and you're playing a light character, it is so hard to break him, even if you pick up the Mega, even if you can get all the guns. And right now, Rapha doesn't have a railgun. Cooller makes a really smart play here. So Cooller comes to this position right here so that he can see where Rapha goes, right? He looks out to see if Rapha crosses near the rockets, and then he sits up in this position and he actually does, in fact, see Rapha. Now, most players there, they jump around, they holler around, they spam some shots, they give away their position, but Cooller doesn't. Cooller uses this information to launch what is a really, really effective attack in theory. Like, you can see Rapha coming up this bounce pad, and you see him move towards this door, but he ultimately doesn't come through it, very, very luckily for him, because there was a Cooller waiting on the other side. Now, unfortunately for Cooller, he's used his acid spit here, hoping Rapha would just be coming through the door. He's blind fired it. Because if he doesn't in this situation, he can just push around this corner. That would be no problem, even if Rapha's there. But because he's used it, he doesn't want to take the rockets to the face. Cooller doesn't really mind if Rapha gets the red armor here, as long as he hits that shot, which he does. A second would be perfect, but he's not going to connect with it. I don't know what that rocket jump was from Rapha. I don't know if he meant to do that. That's another really important rail though, so even though Rapha's just picked up the red and the Mega, he has no stack. And importantly, Rapha's also chipped away all of the armor that Solag had, so right now, they're the closest in stack they're probably going to be for the rest of the game. That would be a fairly safe read of the situation, because Solag, once he starts collecting these small armors, builds up armor so quickly. And so Rapha knows this, he knows he's just picked up the red armor, he actually has a stack advantage, so he does something a bit crazy. He rocket jumps into the Solag with the acid spit up. That can go so badly, and you can see how weak Rapha is there, and he's got the damage ticking down. Like, at the last possible second here, he picks up the Mega Health, which saves his life. Absolutely insane. There's no way that was planned. Just Rapha being Rapha. I can understand why he rocket jumped there, you know? That was probably, because of how Solag works, because of how the small armors work, he probably wasn't actually going to have a stack advantage again for the rest of the game unless he took a really good fight. But what a risk. And yeah, from there, where do you even go? That's Rapha giving up the game, giving up the series, and going 3-0 to Cooller. So Cooller takes the map 3-0. He's looking so strong, you know, he's using the information on the map really effectively. He's playing just incredibly smart with how he fights his opponents and how he sets up these fights. Cooler's my favorite pick to win the Quake World Championship. The Quake World Championship's going to resume in about 2 hours as of recording this video. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. If you have any games from the Quake World Championship that you want to see analysed, send them my way. I'll be happy to have a look. I definitely have more of this kind of video coming. Let me know what you think. I haven't done a video like this before. I've been Phylum. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.